And I think so much of that goes hand in hand with being a woman in business is being also not shy talking about money. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of things, there's a lot of devices and politics around kind of like keeping women small, because when women feel small or they feel like they're not allowed to do things, there's all these crazy statistics about like men will apply for jobs when they meet 50% of the qualifications, and a woman will only apply for the same job when she meets 95% of those qualifications. I've got to imagine you saw this in recruiting. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have Annie on the podcast today. Welcome, Annie.
Hello. So excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, you're not too far off. You're over in Palm Springs in a very colorful background. As you can see, I also have the colors here if you're watching on the YouTube. But we're going to learn all about you and what you do and who you help. So without further ado, take it away.
Awesome. Well, I am, again, so excited. Thanks for having me here. So my name is Annie, and I'm a muralist, and I'm based out of Southern California. Specifically, I work in the Palm Springs, Los Angeles area most, but I do love to travel for work. So if you've got some things in a nice sunny city somewhere, that's my fave. And the clients that I help are people who are really interested on brightening their space with a lot of color. They are wanting to make their space very impactful. Sometimes my clients are also big fans of retro artwork, like I am as well. So that's who I help, and that's my biz.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love the like Southern California minimalism, coastal, like colorful retro minimalism. Like that's totally my jam as well. But you didn't come out the womb with a paintbrush in your hand, like ready to paint murals, right? So You've had a bit of a journey to get to here. Talk us through how you even started a muraling business, what your background is. Is this something you knew you wanted to do? Take us to the beginning.
Yeah. Long story short, no, I did not know that I wanted to be a muralist. Not even until the last couple of years. I actually have a background. I used to work in the corporate world in technical recruiting. She used to hire the engineers. So I had to talk a lot of stuff that I had no clue about. It's just always fun. But talk about the imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, they're going to find out that I have no clue what I'm talking about. But you're just personable. You know what the job is. You can really do anything. So I was in recruiting, and I did find a lot of purpose in, helping people get jobs. That was great. But on the side, I was always interested in like making stickers and mugs and tumblers and sweatshirts. And I made them for fun, really. And I didn't start actually like drawing until 2020, which everybody talks about getting an iPad in 2020. That's what I did. And so it was just always an interest of mine. And, every day sitting at a desk crying because I was so stressed about recruiting, it just kept affirming to me that I was just not in the right space. And it was always a matter of like, how can I get myself out of this? And I didn't actually have to, because I was laid off, which was...
There you go. The universe decided for you.
The universe decided for me. I remember talking to my husband. I was like, I think if I get laid off, this is not going to be a bad thing. And I'm not even going to pretend to look for a job. Like, I'm just going to take it. And so in 2022, I was laid off. And about 2 months into the layoff, or after the layoff, my husband works for the clothing brand Aviator Nation. And he was like, oh, do you want to tag along on a work trip? The build out team is erecting like a quick pop-up shop. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I haven't been to New York, like the city, in a long time. So we get there, and it turns out like this team has a week to completely turn this whole space. If you know the stores, they're covered top to bottom. Totally. They have a week to completely paint this entire store. So they were like, you need help. Like, if you're here, you're helping.
Here's
like,
your paintbrush.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I've never painted before at a large scale. And I hopped up on a ladder, and next thing I know, it was hours later, and they were like, hey, it's time to clean up. But for me, it felt like minutes. And I was like, oh, I entered flow. Like I got into a flow state. And then after that, I told my husband, I said, I want to paint murals. Like, this is what I want to do. And then the next month, I enrolled myself in a business coaching. I got myself a creative coach, and I worked out the kinks on like, how can I do this? I finally have this safety net of a severance layoff package to support that. And I've just been painting since then. So that's kind of
gosh.
That's the villain origin story for me.
Oh, I love that. Oh, and we love an Aviator Nation, like colorful, fun, retro stripes.
Yes.
I can see that right away. Amazing. I turned my mom onto them, and now she's totally addicted.
Same. My mother is like, hey, can I get some more colorful clothes?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's also too, I think, like, me finding them helped me find me. Like
Of
I
course.
realized like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with color. And
Isn't it fun when you like come into your color life? Because I had a similar story in that I started actually, well, similar and dissimilar. I started my business in college and really thought that like to be a serious designer meant that my website needed to be like, my logo should be gray. Like,
Mhm,
what?
mhm.
And it wasn't until like I rebranded from like MKW Graphics, which I was previously, just doing graphic design, $15 an hour, kind of cutting my teeth on the industry, networking my butt off, to being like, okay, actually, no, like this isn't me at all. Like I was trying to be someone I wasn't. And then I really leaned into this like color yellow, how everything is yellow. Everyone knows me for the yellow. So it's just so fun when you can just be like, actually, I think I'd rather be who I am.
Yes, but it also, if you're, how do I say this? Like everybody always preaches authenticity, authenticity, authenticity. Beiges and grays and blacks are
We're
not
also
authentic
wonderful.
to me. And it's not, it actually makes it like difficult decisions when I
Yeah.
have to choose things in those color palettes for my brand, because that's not my favorite thing. My
I
favorite
just
thing are,
had this
yeah,
conversation.
like pinks and oranges and yellows and bright colors. And so it almost just makes more sense to just go with what feels best for you. And that's like how you build the brand. Like,
And it's how you build your style. Like, I think you're
yeah,
totally right. I was saying too, like tans and grays and blacks, they're wonderful, but
love it.
just for somebody else,
Yeah,
just for someone
100%.
else. And there are people that do it really well. And sometimes I am always like, gosh, what would it look like for me to be like a neutrals girly, like clean girl aesthetic neutrals? And like, I try it on and it's like wearing your shoes on the wrong feet. You're
Yes.
like, I know they're shoes, but like, this does not feel right at all.
It feels weird. And it's too, it's just like it's easier to pick things out for yourself when it's what you like. I
Yes.
had the opportunity to attend the first Rooted Muralist conference for all the
Oh,
girls. And I think my biggest takeaway, I was shocked. So many people were coming up to me being like, oh my God, Disco Day, like your brand is so strong. And I'm like, me?
really?
Like, me? And they're like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you curating this like really strong brand? And I'm like, I have no idea. Apparently I'm doing that, but it really is. And I kind of was like sitting with that. And I'm like, I think it's just because these are my favorite things. And it's really easy for me to make decisions for branding purposes or for editing videos or for putting out
Mhm.
my like website. Like it all makes sense in my head because those colors just flow really well
Mhm.
versus if I
Mhm.
was trying, like you had like the black and gray. I don't know, for me, it would just always feel so sterile and, like,
Totally.
difficult to push forward.
Totally.
So,
Well, you and
branding,
I even
pick your faves.
connected. Totally. You and I connected via threads. I kind of put a call out for muralists, artists, curators. That's my interest area as well because I'm fine arts, art history, double major from
Mhm,
undergrad. And I talked to so many business people on this podcast. Like we talked to all of our clients on the podcast. We talked to strategists and ad managers and social media managers and like all these incredibly smart, amazing like business people. But I'm like, you know what we're really lacking is like the creatives, the artists. And so when I saw all these replies on the threads, I like clicked through to everyone's website. I had probably like 47 tabs open. I will say I landed on your website. I was like, oh, done deal. Like this is my girl. Like I was like, this is because you start to attract people that like things that are similar because it feels familiar and it feels home, right? Like you feel
mhm.
like, okay, this is for me because these are all the things that I like. So that is the branding in a nutshell, is it
Yes.
not?
No, I mean, absolutely. The branding is, you're working to attract your dream client. And sometimes I sometimes I hurt my own feelings when I see, a muralist who is just so good at like the black and white and the moody
Mm-hmm.
and then I see
Mm-hmm.
that they've booked this great job and I'm like, oh man, like
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could have booked that. And then I think to myself, no, I don't. Like I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really is like important to hear like you're like, oh, I found you, you're my people, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I create in these colors because they bring me joy and I want to attract people who also feel the same. So like people who reach
Mm-hmm.
out and they're like, hey, can you do this like beige mural? I'm like, thank you. I absolutely could do this,
Right.
but actually here's a
Right.
different artist who specializes in like this moody vibe that you're thinking. And I think that you should reach out to them because I've had people kick over projects to me. I had this, mural I painted last year. The owner was opening up a pet boutique called Disco Dog. And she
Stop.
reached out to a friend of mine and she was like, can you paint this mural for me? And she was like, I could, but you should actually reach out to Annie because disco is her thing. And I think that
It's
she
her
would
whole
kill it.
vibe.
So,
Yeah.
it's all about like passing on what belongs to you or no, keeping what belongs to you, passing along
Yes.
what you think
Passing along the
somebody
ones that
else.
aren't a fit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't talk.
Mm-hmm. I got you. I got you. I got you. I think what's so interesting in the muralists that I've interviewed so far for the show and artists in general is they always bring up how strong that community is, how supportive, how much you can lean on each other, how much you guys pass each other business. I can't say it's the same in the branding community. I definitely
Mhm.
do have like my handful of like girlfriends that also do what I do, and we'll share stuff with each other. But I think that it strikes me that every person I've talked to that's a muralist is like my community, my community, my community. Why do you think that that is?
Um, that's a great question. Well, I think there's vulnerability in creating in general. Like you already have
Mm,
to
mhm,
really open your heart up to be a creator of especially large scale art. Like people are going to be
mhm,
feeling that. So I think that there's a
mhm.
level of vulnerability that we all have that we're all willing to like extend to one another. And also we just get the struggle. We just know that there are
Yeah.
so many hurdles when you're painting. I pump myself up before every project because I remind myself that no project is the same. No clients are the same. Every day is different. And when I know that that's the truth, I'm so much more willing to just like overextend to help another artist because I understand that maybe they're facing something they've never dealt with before and they've been painting for 10 years.
Mhm,
And if there's
mhm,
any way that I can help, then I'm going to. And the other thing is when I was a recruiter, I had a Slack channel of all the recruiters. I had a LinkedIn profile that had all the
mm,
recruiters. And
mhm,
all I had to do was cast a little stone out and the net would catch it.
mhm,
And then I would be like, okay, cool. That there is no space like that when you are a solo creator. And I think that the
mhm,
muralists have sort of banded together saying like, no, we need community. We need that space. And
mhm.
I'm so grateful. I have found several spaces where there's people gathering, there's artists gathering to help. And then the last note I'll say on why I think that artists are so willing to help each other, there's like an infinite number of walls in the world.
That
So
too.
I think that and we can always just paint over one and do another one. Like, I
Uh-huh.
think that there doesn't seem to be this
Scarcity
true
mindset.
scarcity feeling yet. And even in the big city, I'm out here in Palm Springs, like that's even a smaller pocket, and
Mhm.
there's still so much business to be had. So I think that the scarcity mindset doesn't exist the same way it does in like the hustle grind corporate world, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it is inherent in a lot of, like, female-led businesses
Hmm. Hmm.
to prioritize community. Like, I've always been that way. My mom owns her own business, my sister owns her own business, my aunt, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, like, all female business owners. So it's
Hmm.
like, I have that just within my own family, like, this sense of community of, like, "Oh, I have this client that was a jerk to me," or, like, "What do I do about my service pricing? What do I do about
Yeah.
this?" Like, and just having it, like you said, like, cast that stone and get the net. But I think that's what's so lovely and antithetical to Mark Zuckerberg's new thesis of workplaces should be more aggressively masculine, which I don't agree with at all. Because I think that did you not catch this on Joe Rogan? Oh my goodness.
I try and limit because it is
Oh.
all so painful.
Uh-huh. 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 Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
didn't catch that, but
Oh yeah.
but
Well,
the
if you
first
if you if you want to have a rage later,
oh, we could
if you want
rage.
to like get motivated to go to like a kickboxing class or something like to that effect, go watch the clip.
Mm.
But I think that there's just a beautiful feminine energy that comes from community building that's so beneficial to everyone in business.
It's it really is. I don't know if you've read Melinda Gates' The Moment of Lift.
No, but I should
Oh,
add it to my list immediately.
girl, add it to your list because
Okay.
it is the basis of the book is that women lift
Mhm.
economies, not men,
I believe
like
that. Oh, I believe
women
that.
and the efforts that we do and the communities that we foster and the help that we give, the empathy we provide, the ideas, because our brains are constantly multitasking. Our brains have to think in problem solving ways because by nature, that was our job is like keep life going. And so
Mhm.
we bring that into any space that we are. Women are the I could get
No,
emotional
please. No,
about this.
please. This is my favorite thing. This is
Yeah,
my
it's
favorite thing.
it's just mind-blowing to me to hear that like, oh, sorry. It
Mhm.
gets it
No.
gets really grinds my gears because I think that when I look on my own career, and I'm sure that you can do this too, any single big opportunity that I've been given has been given to me either by a woman or with the help of a woman.
Mhm.
Everything.
Mhm.
I've had a
Mhm.
talk about this like last year. I met with a coach about this, and I was like, everything that I have, every opportunity, every referral, it's always from a
Mhm.
woman.
Mhm.
Like men aren't looking out the same.
Mm-mm.
They're not
Mm-mm.
trying to make sure that everybody, you're all good. We're all good. Okay, cool. As long as
Mhm.
you're good too, you have a
Mhm.
job. Awesome. It blows my mind that somebody would say that because women are just like the backbone of like lifting everything.
The
Yeah,
comment
it's a great
section,
book. You should read it.
I definitely need to check it out, but the comment section under that clip is someone said, "Tell me you're getting a divorce without telling me you're getting a divorce." I was like, "Oh my god." But it's just wild. We've made so much progress. Like, and I think it's so interesting to be like a female entrepreneur in 2025 because there are a lot of like maybe not so great things that came out of like female entrepreneurship of trying to fit in this mold of this like girl boss mold, right? Of this like
Yep.
hustle and just like posting pictures of like the most lavish outrageous things and like like the sense of having to prove yourself or that this like girl boss idea was like a very like prototypical pink blazer sparkles
Mm-hmm.
very specific demographic that was not at all inclusive, that was not at all uplifting,
No.
and that was kind of like step on people's necks to get what you want. So there's a bit of a course correction, but I think to swing the pendulum back to the other way is not it. It's not it at all.
It's not the
And it's
vibe.
crazy. And I think so much of that goes hand in hand with being a woman in business is being also not shy talking about money. And there's a lot of
Yes.
stuff going on, and there's a lot of things, there's a lot of devices and politics around kind of like keeping women small because
Mhm.
when women feel small or they feel like they're not allowed to do things, there's all these crazy statistics about like men will apply for jobs when they meet 50% of the qualifications and a woman will only apply for the same job when she meets 95% of those qualifications.
I
I've got to
mean,
imagine you saw this in recruiting.
oh, please. First of all, I was also in tech. And so that's
Oh yeah.
already a crazy space in terms of like the division of female versus male people applying. And so, yes, I did see like a huge number of that. But the other thing that my brain just immediately jumps to is like,
Mhm.
we just had the most qualified person ever in the history of this nation to
Literally.
run for president. And she
Uh-huh.
lost to
Uh-huh.
somebody who is 25%. I'd say 10% maybe qualified for
Uh-huh.
this position.
Uh-huh.
I was
Oh,
watching Sex in
and
the
a
City the other
criminal.
day. Oh, and a criminal. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
watching Sex in the City the other day and he popped up and I was like, oh, an actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think
With
yes,
ya.
women need to they need to apply to more things because we truly can get the jobs. And that was one of the things at the conference we had. There was a whole pricing section and all of us are like furiously taking notes. Like, okay,
Mhm.
what are we all agreeing is like our baseline? Because
Mm.
when
Mhm.
you as an artist are undercutting yourself, you're actually hurting us because
Right.
you're allowing the bar to come lower. As females, here's where the bar is. This is what we set our pricing as. And it was so great to hear the leaders of that conference share the numbers that they're making per
Mhm.
year. We had the
Mhm.
speakers come, they shared how much that they made this last year. And it was so, I was like, oh, you guys are making triple what I'm making. And I tripled my income last year. So
Yep. Yep.
like,
Yep.
how is this? I
Yep.
gotta get where you're at. And
Yep.
it was eye opening. It made me feel more empowered to go out there and like continue to put myself out there because the work is there. I just have to show up, like
Yes.
truly. So
Yes.
yes,
And
hearing the numbers, hearing it was
hear the numbers because when you hear it and you see it, you can start to imagine it. Like
yes,
we can't imagine a thing that we don't know exists.
right.
So you have to first know that it exists to be able to be like, okay, interesting. That's how you got there. Huh. All right. Now I know that that's even possible. Now that I even
Hmm.
know that that's a possibility for me, I think is so eye opening in so many ways. But to your point about pricing, it's scary to put your numbers out there. I think
Terrifying.
especially when you're just getting started, right? So what are little like things or isms or stuff that stuck with you going from your corporate background? You know, you had your severance to kind of be your launch pad, but how did you, those first few jobs, like were you confident being like, yep, this is it? Or were you like, oh my God, send and like close the email and like walk away?
No, absolutely not. I was not. I I actually just submitted a bid in like November for the highest
Amazing.
proposal I have yet. And I was in a room full of all my friends because we were traveling. And I was like, you guys, and I literally was sweating. And I'm like, this is
Mhm.
the highest thing I've ever had to send. And I was freaking out. So it still happens. It's still a part of it. But they were like, know your worth, send, hit
Yeah.
send, like just send it. And so that's one of the things. But in the beginning, no, I also was still like super lost. I hadn't found the community yet. So I knew somewhat. I downloaded a couple different things from some other creators about how to price and what that should look like. But ultimately, my very first mural, which is just a fun story in itself, I posted a mock-up of a Palm Springs mural and I just put it up on my page. And I said, this is me manifesting that I want to paint a wall in Palm Springs. this woman comments and she says, I might have a wall for you. This woman found my page because my mom bought an ornament from her shop on Etsy. And so my
Oh my
mom was
gosh.
like, oh, my daughter, she paints. Or I don't even know how she got here. But basically, I chatted with this woman and she had an Airbnb in Palm Springs. And she said, you can stay there for free for, however long you need to paint. And we worked out a price. It was probably, I'd say 1/10 of what I could have charged for a project now at that size. I painted 3 huge murals. They were poolside. They're epic. They're great. They're full of color. So many colors. Like I really put a lot of heart into it, but it was for pennies, but that mural, I was able to market and push. And that was like the jump start for me. And because I showcased that I was painting that, the owner for Aviator Nation, she saw my husband resharing my work. And she said, I didn't know Annie could paint. Let's get her out. And so I went on the next build out for a month and a half, painting the largest store to date for Aviator Nation. And that was like an epic experience that wouldn't have happened had I not just in the beginning kind of like understood I wasn't going to book a $10,000 mural for like my very first time. I needed some of this like baseline experience. And that kind of just was like how the beginning was. And I think that that's really fair when you're starting out to say, okay, this is for the portfolio. This is for me to push content. I took so much videos, photos. I had my husband out there like, different shot, get the one, get this, come behind me, get this shot, like making sure that I took full advantage of the fact that I was doing a mural that was in my style, all my bright colors. It was Palm Springs branded. And, just to like utilize that was my first opportunity. And even though I did it I think I lost money on that.
I mean, most people do in the beginning, right? As you've heard me say time and time again on this podcast, what worked in 2024 for social media management is not the same as what's going to cut it in 2025. Platforms are shifting, algorithms are chaotic, and keeping up feels like playing whack-a-mole in the wild, wild west. That's exactly why we made our 2025 social media webinar. This is the deck that we actually sent to our clients. It's 65 slides long. And in the 45-minute webinar, I basically walk you through all the platforms, who owns them, their involvement with the current political administration, what are the pros and cons of each platform, what content performs best, as well as what our team would need for strategy, content creation, and posting and engagement to run the strategy on behalf of your brand. So whether you're a small business owner looking to work with us, or you're also a social media manager or creative just trying to get a better grip of the social media landscape, this is a resource you're going to want to take advantage of. You want to head to our website, mkwcreativeco.com/resources. So mkwcreative.co/resources. This is the 2025 social media webinar. And just for you, I included the one-pager reference guide that we've also sent to our clients to really give you the full menu of options in one big flash sheet. So take advantage of it or hit the link in the show notes to get access to our 2025 social media webinar, because it is wild out there and you shouldn't have to figure it out by yourself. Good luck. Enjoy. There's that sweet spot between know your worth and also like realize that when you're doing something for the first time, it's the first time you're doing it.
Yeah.
So it is, in a way, it is somewhat of a risk for that client to hire you.
Yeah.
So you need to make it to a point. And I'm always honest about that. We, like, for example, our team is getting back into building websites. Like we weren't finding website designers that we felt like could service the clients the way that we knew that we could, because we built our website and have built websites before. And so it's kind of this thing where I'm on the call down. I'm like, hey, this is a beta program. Like we're going to try the best that we can, and we're going to learn, and we're going to ask your feedback a lot along the way. But in return, you're going to get a really good price break.
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, because we need to work out the kinks. You don't know what you don't know, right? So I'm sure that like your process now as a muralist is way different than that first job. You probably have things planned ahead of time. Like I'm loving all your videos where you like all of your hacks for like how to use your tape so it doesn't drip and make a mess. Like you're learning, like you learn as you go, and you only learn that by doing. So it's that weird balance, like the weird scales, right? Where it's like, okay, I don't know this, but also like, I'm not going to charge that much, but the only way I'm going to get better is if I do it. Do you kind of grapple with that? Or is that seems like it resonates with you? Yeah.
No, that's like, that fully resonates. I think I saw somewhere that it was like your first 3 to 5 murals you can take at like a lower discounted rate.
Yes.
Anything after 5, you should charge a beginner, like, price point. You're not charging up in like the $50 per square foot business, but like, maybe you're starting at 25 or 30 per square foot, which is still a fantastic, if it's a big space, it adds up. And that's also before I even got into muraling, I was, like I said, I was making stickers and tumblers, and I gosh, where did I hear it? I think it was in the coaching program, but they were like, you should have one large offering because that'll help you
Oh,
while you're doing small things. And I thought, my one large offering is murals. And so
yeah,
the payoff is great when you can really get into muraling. But in
sure.
the beginning, totally like have that little bit of a discount, but know that you're still doing it. You're not,
Uh-huh.
like you're not you're a muralist now. And
Mhm.
you should
Mhm.
own that. And that took me a while too to even realize, like, to own, like, oh, I'm an artist, and coming off
Yeah.
of, like, when I used to tell people like, oh, I'm a recruiter at,
Yeah.
Snap or Hulu, like wherever I was, it felt so good to have somebody be like, oh, you work
Oh.
there. And when I
Mm.
left, I'd be like, oh, I'm an artist. They're like, and what else?
Oh,
What are you
yeah.
doing? Like,
Oh.
what's your real
Oh,
job?
so what does your husband do?
Every
Did
time.
you ever get that
So
one?
what does he do? And I'm like, he helps me
What?
paint.
Yeah, he's taking my behind the scenes
Yeah.
videos. Thank you very much.
He is learning videography at its finest point.
Yes, exactly.
So, so yes,
Yeah.
hopefully that answers your question.
Interesting. No, definitely answers the question. And just goes to show that like coming into I hope that the culture is shifting. I hope that the culture is shifting because the starving artist paradox is always going to somehow be there lingering in the background.
Mhm.
You'd think that with all the education and all the celebration that we put behind cinema and TV and art and advertisement and all these things that like that would be more celebrated, but it does feel like there's still this cultural resistance to if you're good at something, therefore you should struggle to have it. What
Mhm.
do you think about the starving artist stereotype and how have you like debunked it or how are you actively working to debunk it in your circles and in your career?
Yeah, I think that I don't remember where I heard this, but just the notion of, I love painting and I would do it for free. And that
Yeah.
means that I should actually charge triple because
Yep.
you're going to get a product that has so much passion and heart put into it, that it's going to make it worth the money. You're going to
Mhm.
love that you invested in this because it's being done by somebody who would do it for free because this is what I would love to spend every day doing. I love painting.
Mhm.
I The
Mhm.
back end, the business side of things is, I have to do it. But when I actually
Yes.
get to show up to the project and start putting paint on the wall, I'm like, yes, this is it.
Mhm.
So I think like the starving artist notion is that artists are creating out of their heart. And if you
Mhm.
are creating out of your heart, then you should be charging because it's going to be quality. It's going to come from somewhere with purpose.
Mhm.
It's born out of your own brain. Everybody has their own unique voice. It's not AI generated. It's not
Mhm.
a bulk, wallpaper that was designed, that everybody's getting. You're getting something
Mhm.
custom when it's handmade like that. And so I think like that's how we combat the starving artist is like, no, this is only, you're going to get this with me.
Mhm.
You can
Mhm.
get something else very similar, but if you come to me, this is what you're paying for. This is what you're going to get, and I'm going to
Well, and that
charge.
that kind of creativity and flow state like you were talking about is regenerative.
Hmm.
Like when you're in like as an artist, as a creative, is like you're really in flow and like things are coming to you and you're like jazzed and you're pumped and you're psyched. I can now go be a better person to everyone else. Like
Yes.
I'm going to be nicer at the grocery store and in
Yep.
my workouts and to my mom and to my sister. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it does have that like ripple effect
Hmm.
of like if we keep celebrating which each person is so individually good at, that person also then is a better person to
Yes.
everybody else. Maybe that's very woo woo. We are Southern California, so like I'll own that.
I'll own it. No, but you just said something, and I was like, wait, yes, that. Gosh, what did you just repeat back with me?
Regenerative.
Regenerative.
Creativity is it's like a recharge on the battery.
Oh, yes, and to that point, that I was listening to one of your earlier episodes about branding, this
Huh?
morning to get ready. I was like, oh, I just want to kind of hear what they're talking about. And you said something that, really, I was like, yes, this feels right to me. The rooms that I'm looking to create are ones where somebody walks in and their jaw hits the floor because the color knocks them out. And they
Mhm.
feel the emotions from that color. And then they
Mhm.
take those like fun emotions out into the world. It's regenerative. Like
Mhm.
I want somebody to
Mhm.
see my art and say, wow, that's so fun, it's so loud, it's so colorful, and it's going to be something that they carry with them throughout their day and throughout their, if that's their store, that's what their, employees are seeing, that's what their patrons are seeing. If it's an office, this is the vibe that these employees get to sit with every day. So yes, regenerative, very much so.
And subjective as well. Like all art is subjective, right?
Yeah.
It so depends on the context. And it so depends on the combination of everything you've ever seen and ever learned in your life. And I, as a fine arts major, this is a fun story. I think I've told this maybe once or twice in the podcast, but it's been a while. Is my senior thesis show, I was a sculpture video major. And so I was not a painter and a drawer, like never took painting and drawing. I wanted to do new media. I was like very interested in all of that. And my senior thesis year, I was really interested on creating feedback loops, like digital feedback loops, about how kind of like commentary on like echoing into the void, right? So basically, if you take a webcam and you fix it on the projection of its own webcam, you get like an infinity mirror if you stand between it. But it projects when you crank up the saturation, it makes these crazy kaleidoscope of colors. So when you step in, you get reflected into this. I'll share a picture later. It'll make sense. But my senior thesis, the painting professor, you have your senior thesis defense and you have to get up in front of all the professors and explain your piece. And this was the only piece in my show. Whereas like printmakers and artists and well, not artists, but printmakers, painters, drawing people that did drawing or sculpture had multiple pieces. I just had this one piece. This was like my one, this is it. And I remember the painting professor said, your paper was super interesting and we've got all this great history and research, but I came in your show and it's completely devoid of content. It's devoid of content. There's nothing here. And the only thing I thought to say in my like spunky 20-year-old like body was like, if that's your experience, who am I to tell you that you're wrong? I was like, next question.
Like
next
literally
question.
that's the answer.
If that's what you think that it is, if anything, it's color. It's digital color theory. Like on the whole room is in colors.
Right.
And he was like, but all of his work was like extremely narrative and like deeply embedded in story, where he was always trying to very clearly push his story agenda onto the viewer. And they were heartbreaking stories of immigration and war and his history and his culture. And like, there's a time and place for appreciating that.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's not me though. And that's not what I'm interested in, like for the point of art making. Yeah. But to come in and say that there was nothing there and like you could hear a pin drop in this room. I was like, if that's how you feel, it's like, isn't that the beauty of art? Is that not the beauty of art, right?
No, it absolutely is. I mean, it just goes back to not everybody sees my work and feels joy, because those are the people who thrive in the beige and the neutral and the millennial gray. And I still think that there are wonderful spaces where those colors belong. But they can also, you can also have color. You can also have these things. And that's called the duality of man, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has their different, their different vibe. And yeah, that's crazy that professor said that. This is void of anything.
Yes.
You're like,
there's nothing, this completely devoid of subject matter. And I was like, yeah, okay.
And crazy, because it's like, well, I did work on this. Like I actually put a lot into this. So it's crazy that you would claim devoid, because you're insinuating that there's devoid.
That's exactly what he was insinuating. He was really bad. I didn't take his painting and drawing classes, and I will stand by that. But besides the point, like, but even if I didn't like quote unquote work on it, I'm putting this up as a subject of discussion, like we're talking about, right? Like art is subjective. If anything, we're still talking about it right now. Like that's enough for it to become, that is a thing. Just because I didn't paint it for 47 hours doesn't mean it's not art in its own way. So it's so interesting to think about that, and then think about like you do these huge public displays of art. Like, why would that also not be celebrated, or celebrated financially? Do you know what I mean? Or funded by the government, funded by communities, funded by private business. Like it is that conversation. It is that linger. It is that third space. It's like that chance for people to connect or hate it. Like if that's your emotional reaction, you're completely entitled to that as a reaction.
When I first started, I used to think that because my work wasn't blending, it wasn't spray paint, it wasn't the fine art style of painting, I really did struggle with who wants this looks like little kid block shapes. And being online chronically, I realized there is a space for that. People do celebrate this as a style of art, to your point, that it doesn't matter that this is a different medium or this is a different way of creating. This was created by somebody with a heart, and this was created with somebody with a point of view. Then it's celebrated. It's just art. Yeah. There are times where I'm traveling and I see, what's that psychology term, when the more you're thinking about something, the more you see it?
Confirmation bias.
I see murals everywhere.
Like
every single space. I'm like, mural. Or I also see blank wall. Yes. And I'm like, I should reach out to that. But there are times where I see murals and I think to myself, not my style, but somebody did create this. Therefore, 'tis art.
Yes, exactly,
So,
exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of blank walls, when you do see that blank wall and you're like, and you get your evil laugh and the fingers start tippy tapping, right?
yes.
It's like, what can I do here? We talked a little bit before we started recording about the difficulty of being an advocate for yourself in the business when you have your business hat on, of you've pitched a business or you've sent a proposal and there's an objection, and now maybe your imposter syndrome or your self-doubt is kicking in, or like that nervous, like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm sending this in an email, send, walk away, like feeling comes about.
Mhm.
Like most things, these are muscles and we have to train them to get stronger.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you've learned kind of from your corporate background and now with your experience as being a muralist that have helped you get over that like initial fear of rejection and channel it into more of an opportunity to either learn or change scope?
Yeah.
What's that look like for you?
Yeah. Looks like a lot of things. I do have like a background in sales. And I remember that my boss used to tell us like you had to get 25 no's in an hour
Oh my
on
gosh.
like the phone or talking to people. And so I don't have like a fear of rejection. If somebody's like, no,
Hmm.
I'm like, okay. Like
Okay.
I don't
Cool.
fear hearing the no. The new fear that comes now that didn't back when I was in recruiting and sales is because when I was in those jobs, we would often do role playing where, okay, if I'm the candidate and I say, no, I don't really have time to talk about this. Me as the recruiter could say, it's only a 20-minute call. I would love to set this up for you. When do you have time? And we learned how to navigate getting those crazy objections. And we learned to say them with confidence. And so in the muralist space, I realized that I'm getting all these different rejections, but they're the exact same thing. It's always the no, I don't have time. No, I don't have money. No, we don't have the right space for it. And when I was starting, I would just take the no as a no instead of saying,
Mhm. Mhm.
3 no's is actually the true no. But the
Mhm.
first no is actually a test. And I've been learning that in this space as well. And so to figure out what are the common objections that I'm seeing, like I mentioned, if I don't have the time, I
Mhm.
don't have the money,
Mhm.
how can I start to role play those answers and build that muscle on how to respond? And so that's also kind of something that I've going to be working on in terms of a product offering, which is crazy to think about. But I would love to start creating sort of a guide for muralists and artists on
Mm.
common objections that we're seeing in this space from clients, from just the various people that we're pitching, and how it can we as the artist, who is also the business owner, this is my brand, this is my business. I'm not
Mhm.
just painting. I do have to wear this hat of
Mhm.
selling myself, of marketing. How can I overcome these objections and come out with a sale on the end? Because that's truly at the end of the day, we're just in the negotiation process. And maybe I'm not good at that at the beginning. So I am going to be working on an offering of putting out something that helps take my background in recruiting and sales and helps the mural community a bit more. But hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting because I think it's something, like you said, it's a muscle that takes practice as well. But you start to learn, if you can learn the objections, you can start to forecast them better, right? If you
100%.
can start to learn, like, oh, okay, when I'm reaching out to this Airbnb owner in Palm Springs that like has a cute spot and they're saying their first objection is money, it's like, oh, well, would you be interested in maybe like a lesser rate for a trade?
Mm-hmm.
Or have you thought about if you had this mural, you would book more stays because people would go out of their way to stay at your place instead of
Yes.
the other one because of this mural? Like, how can you use it as a marketing tool? Like, and starting to forecast those objections, like either as they're having them or before they even have them, knowing that that's kind of like your rap sheet that you have in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
But this happens a lot in my industry with it's typically the marketing manager of the company that will reach out saying
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't have the assets I need to run this business well anymore, and we need a rebrand, but the owners don't want it. So then I get pulled in somehow on a call with like the marketing manager and the owners of the company. And the
Mm-hmm.
owners are like, we know we need new branding, but we love our logo and we want to keep our logo from 1995 that we made on Microsoft Paint. And I was like, here's the deal. Let me explain, right? And this happened with a client where we first had their discovery call in 2022
Wow.
and we didn't finish the branding until August 2024 because it was a three-time objection. It was the objection on the first discovery call.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're like, came back a month later and they're like, actually, can we talk to you again? Would you still be open to using the same logo? And I was like, I'm just going to tell you this logo isn't serving you for what you tell me your goals are. So until you're ready to consider changing it,
Mm-hmm.
we're probably not going to be the team for you. And so that was
Yeah.
the second one. And then it was a third one where they're like, okay, we want to see what you can do. I was like, great. And then sure enough, presented it and they're like, oh, wow. Yeah, we didn't know it could be this way. Right.
Yeah.
But that's something that like now when I talk to my team, if I have a similar call, I'm like, oh, getting flashbacks. I was like, we got this situation again because now we remember. Right. And it was like, okay, that worked. Can you think of an instance maybe for you where like you did an initial outreach, it was a no, you went back, it was a no again, and you went back the third time and they were like, actually, yes. It doesn't have to be that exact, but like, maybe something, maybe an objection even in real time or like on that first call where they were like, it was a no to the money or a no to the time.
Yeah. I think that part of the business model that I've implemented in is because what you're saying and what they said was, oh, I didn't know it could look like this. And I know that I'm a creator and I can do a mean mock-up. So I love to be able to say, you know what, we could talk about pricing in a bit, but here, I made this free mood board for you. This is a mock-up of what I think that we could do. And the second that somebody sees what's possible, they're so much more willing to jump in and talk about negotiating for prices and how we can work together. Because at the end of the day, like, this is my business. I need to get paid. And so do you. And this makes sense. But I love being able to toss in the mock-ups or the mood board to say, this is actually how we can do this. Because like you said, people see when they believe when they see. And I have had clients where they were on the fence until they saw that mood board. And so I had them in the pocket and then put the mood board out and they were like, yes, let's move forward. This looks stellar. So that would probably be an example. And like I said, I'm also pretty new still in this space. And so I'm still also navigating these objections and these conversations. I've been really fortunate that a lot of the projects that I had last year were referrals. So I didn't have to do too much cold outreach. However, I know that there's some gold in the cold outreach, and I have been working behind the scenes trying to figure out how can I make this process of outreach more streamlined, because as a recruiter, I knew I had to send out 100 emails and I'd get back like 2 and I'd get one person on the phone. But that was the name of the game. So I'm familiar with that feeling, and it's just a matter of actually pivoting now and putting it into practice in my own business.
Well, we're going to hold you to it because now it's recorded in a podcast.
It really is. I have to just do it.
If someone who's listening wants to hire you, just from everything you've said today, can you tell us where they can find you, follow you, and work with you?
Yes. So my Instagram is at It's a Disco Day, and my website is www.it'sadiscoday.com. And I'm also on TikTok. I've started to post there as well. I have always kind of posted, but recently I've gone into just full I don't care mode. And I was like, Instagram can be the pretty face and these videos. And then TikTok is where I do like the artist humor side of things, because I don't know. I think that just like adding a humor aspect to all of this makes life bearable. But that's where the kids can find me. That's where the folks, that's where the moguls, that's where the very people who love colors and art can find me.
We love it. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for this fun conversation. It's been so nice to connect to a fellow color lover. And if you're down in San Diego, we'll have to cross paths.
I would love that. And thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun getting to chat today. And I'm looking forward to all the future fun.
And once you have your your objection offering ready to go, you'll have to share it into the Kiss My Aesthetic Facebook group so that people can take advantage of it.
I will absolutely.
Much needed resource.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time on the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.